All right, so for this first problem here where we're factoring it, again, we're looking to see what I can factor out of both terms. And because we have this 9x plus 8 here, and we have a 9x plus 8 here, that would lead you to see that, yes, we will be able to factor out 9x plus 8. But remember, sometimes it can be a little bit tricky doing it with this second set here. So to help us remember, if I was going to put parentheses around that like we have it over here, what number would be out front of those parentheses? Yep, a 1. And so because of that, when I factor that out then, you notice that it's going to be 9x plus 8 times 4x plus 1. And so we got to have that plus 1 in there. All right, then on to the next one. In this case, well, it looks like maybe we can't do it here, right? Because we have a 5x plus 4, but then we have a negative 5x and a negative 4. But what can I factor out of that negative 5x minus 4?
Negative 1.
Yep, negative 1. This is now going to be kind of the new wrinkle where we're going to be dealing with some negatives today, where if you factor a negative out, then you can change the signs of both of those terms. In general, the rule that you're going to go by is you're going to always want to keep whatever the first term is, like that x term inside the parentheses, you're going to want to keep that positive. So that first one was a positive 5x, and we want to make the second one a positive 5x. So when I saw this was a negative 5x, I knew to factor out the negative 1 for that reason. All right, then once we have it written this way, then we can go ahead and factor out that 5x plus 4 because it is a 5x plus 4 in both of them. And so we end up there. Now, compared to those first two, the last one I hope was easy, because this last one, both of them include the 14x plus 9, and there's no 1s to have to insert ourselves or anything like that. So it ends up being 14x plus 9 times just the x minus 15. All right, with this problem, we're going to be practicing the grouping method specifically. So as we go through this, rather than you just seeing me do it, I'm wanting you to always kind of be one step ahead of me. And I'm going to stay pretty close to you on this one here. So, what is our first step going to be when we do this one?
Multiply A and C.
Yep. Multiply A times C. So start by doing that. And so when we multiply A times C, A of course is whatever's in front of x squared. C is the number that doesn't have any x on it at all. So I'm going to be multiplying 15 times 8 in this. And so that gives me 120. All right, now I know AC. What do I do next? Yep, you're going to figure out what two numbers multiply to 120, so what multiplies to our AC value, but adds to our B value, our negative 22. So now again, be working ahead, figure out what two numbers do add to negative 22 and multiply to a positive 120. Now recently we saw a number of problems where the A and C values would be the combination that also added to our AC value, or added to our middle number rather. But that's not the case in this case. So we need a different combination that's going to give me the 22 and the 120. And when I look at 120, the first number that leaps to mind that goes into 120 because it ends in a 0 is 10. Can I use 12 and 10? Yeah, because 12 and 10 gives me a positive 22. Of course, I need a negative 22, but I'm still multiplying to a positive, so that just means make them both negative. So it could be a negative 12 and a negative 10. All right, now that I've found my two numbers, what do I do with that information? Yeah, remember that these two add to my middle term, my B term? So what I do is I'm splitting up that B into those two values. Now notice I'm only splitting the B into those, so the first term stays exactly the same and the last term stays exactly the same. The only thing that changes is that instead of a minus 22x in the middle, it's minus 12x minus 10x. All right, from there then, this is now where you do the factoring, where you're just going to factor the first two terms, and then you're going to factor the last two terms. So factor out of each of those, and again notice we need to keep the x coefficients positive. So you might have to factor out a negative here in order to make that happen. All right, so out of those first two terms, between the 15 and the 12, I see that I could divide them both by 3. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to divide them both by 3, but I also see there's x's in both of them. And yes, you must factor out the 3x when you do that. All right, so then that's going to leave me with 5x minus 4. All right, next step. I'm looking at that second step. Now, both into 10 and 8, I can pull out a 2. But if I just pull out a 2, I'd end up with negative 5x plus 4, which is close to what I have in the first parentheses, but it's not the same. That's why we try to keep that x term positive. So instead of factoring out a 2, I'm going to factor out a negative 2. And that way, it's not a negative 5x now, it's a positive 5x. And that's the part that I need to keep positive. And so then it ends up being 5x. And again, I'm factoring out a negative 2 out of 8. 8 divided by negative 2 is a negative 4. Keep track of those signs as you go. All right, now that we're here, what is our last step going to be?
Take off.
Yep. The last step is to now just factor this. So in this kind of a case, you look for whatever's common between both the terms and pull that out to finish it off. And so when you factor that out, then we end up with this as our final answer. The 5x minus 4 times 3x minus 2. And again, if you switch the order of those two parentheses and wrote 3x minus 2 times 5x minus 4, yes, that is fine. So go ahead and write down this problem and then go ahead and work it through yourself. Hopefully you're able to do the whole thing before I start putting up the steps, but at least work it through as far as you can. And then when I put up the step that you had gotten stuck on, then you can see how you to get over that piece. Now a quick little note on this part here. I chose to write the negative 20x first and then the negative 33x. If you had written it in the other order, if you had done the negative 33x and then the negative 20x, that would also be fine. You will still end up with the same answer. It's just that your next line might look slightly different. That's the only difference it'll make.